Hello. It's good to see you. Today we're going to be reading some recipes for different types of breads. Look at this dog. This little cookbook is so cute. It's called Grandpa's Little Cookbook. And it looks like this last section was little souffles and pies and stuff. And zesty carrots. But we're looking at breads right now. Oh, we're going to be making something really good on Thursday. You got to come back for that. We're going to be making a cheesecake. Now, my last attempt at making cheesecake did not turn out too well, so maybe this will be better. I think it's going to be really good. So that's coming up on Thursday. But right now, we're going to read some bread recipes. Like here's a recipe for angel biscuits. Now, when we talk about biscuits, we're not talking about cookies. A biscuit is just a piece of bread. It's not sweet. It's kind of like a scone, but it's not sweet. And biscuits go with everything. Now, this is a recipe for a small batch of angel biscuits. And for these, you're going to need 1 package of dry yeast, 1/4 cup of warm water, 2½ cups of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/8 of a cup of sugar, 1/2 cup of shortening, and 1 cup of buttermilk. Let the yeast dissolve in the warm water and set it aside. Mix all the dry ingredients together as listed. Cut the shortening into the dry mixture as you do for pie dough. Stir in the buttermilk and yeast mixture. Thoroughly blend the mixture. The dough can be refrigerated or it can be kneaded lightly. After removing the dough from the refrigerator, it should be allowed to sit at room temperature to allow it to rise. Roll it out on a floured board. Cut out the biscuits with a biscuit cutter. Place biscuits in a greased pan and allow the dough to rise a little before baking. Bake them at 400 degrees for about 12 to 15 minutes. Now, normally when I make biscuits, I would not even... The kind I make don't have yeast or shortening in them or sugar, so I'm not familiar with that recipe. But they're good though. Here's a recipe for applesauce nut bread. That sounds interesting. And for this one, you're going to need 2 cups of flour, 3/4 of a cup of sugar, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of soda, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 cup of broken nuts. That sounds painful. Either pecans or walnuts. 1 cup of applesauce, 1 beaten egg, and 2 tablespoons of melted shortening. Well, this looks really easy. Mix nuts into sifted dry ingredients. Add applesauce and shortening into beaten egg. Stir in dry ingredients and mix slightly. Bake in a bread pan at 350 degrees for 1 hour. Gosh, an hour. Wow. Well, that sounds easy. And then down here at the bottom, we have a banana nut bread recipe. You need 1 cup of butter, 1 cup of sugar, 2 eggs beaten, 1 cup of chopped nuts. They're mean to nuts. 3 bananas, 2 cups of sifted flour, and 1 teaspoon of soda. Cream the butter and sugar. Add the beaten eggs. Cream the bananas until fluffy and add to the sugar mixture, alternating with dry ingredients. Add chopped nuts. Pour the mixture into a greased loaf pan and bake at 350 degrees for 1 hour. That sounds easy. And according to this recipe, this is the best ever. These are the best ever homemade pancakes. Now let's see, you're going to need 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1 3/4 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 4 tablespoons of sugar, 1 cup of milk, 2 eggs lightly beaten, and 3 tablespoons of melted butter. Okay, and you combine the first 4 ingredients in a large bowl and stir well. Combine the milk eggs and butter in a small bowl and stir well. Add the dry ingredients, stirring just until blended. For each pancake, pour about 1/4 cup of batter onto a hot, lightly greased griddle. Turn the pancakes when the tops are covered with bubbles and the edges look cooked. And you're going to get 12 4-inch pancakes from this recipe. Oh, and then we have blueberry muffins. I love those. For these, you're going to need 1/2 cup of butter, 2 cups of flour, 2 eggs, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2½ cups of blueberries. Well, that's a lot. 2 teaspoons of sugar for topping, 1/2 cup of milk, 1½ cups of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Grease and flour muffin pans. Cream the butter, eggs, and sugar. Sift the flour, baking powder, and salt. Add alternately with milk and vanilla. Mash 1/2 cup of berries and stir in, and then add the remaining berries. Spoon into muffin pans, half full. Sprinkle the top with sugar. Bake at 375 degrees for 30 minutes. Cool in pans for 45 minutes. That makes 1 dozen blueberry muffins. And then down here, if these are too good and you like to punish yourself, you can make bran muffins, which are never good. There's never a good time for those things. I don't care how stopped up you are, bran muffins are never good. I hate them. Sorry. I just think I hate them. Okay, but we'll read it. You need 1 cup of sugar or 1½ cups of honey. That would lead you to believe it's going to be good. They're awful. 2 3/4 cup of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2½ teaspoons of soda, 2 eggs, 3 or 4 cups of hard spring wheat bran. That sounds terrible. Ew. It says other bran will do. It doesn't matter. It's equally terrible. 2 cups of buttermilk, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 cup of oil. Sunflower is best. They don't say why. 1 cup of boiling water. That's to pour over yourself if you ever start thinking about eating a bran muffin. 1 cup of raisins or chopped dates. If you like bran muffins, that's fine. You just don't know any better. Pour boiling water over dates, or not like your date if you're out. Or raisins, and add soda. Mix together other ingredients. Add the cool raisin/date mixture and mix lightly. Pour in muffin tins. Bake at 375 degrees for 20 minutes. This recipe should make 24 muffins, and then you can just pop them right out of that muffin pan straight into the trash can. I really don't like bran muffins. I don't know why. They're gross. Oh, here's something I've never seen. Broccoli cornbread. I don't know about that either. To make this, you're going to need 1 10-ounce package of chopped frozen broccoli, cooked and drained, 1 medium onion, finely chopped, 4 eggs beaten, 6 ounces of cottage cheese, small curd, 1 package of Jiffy cornbread or corn muffin mix, 1 stick of margarine melted, and a dash of salt. Combine the drained broccoli, chopped onion, eggs, cottage cheese, and melted margarine in a large bowl. Mix in the Jiffy cornbread mix and salt. Mix well, but do not beat the ingredients, because that's just mean. Pour the mixture into a greased 9 by 13 inch pan. A metal pan is better than glass. Bake at 350 degrees for 25 minutes. If desired, sprinkle with shredded cheddar cheese and broil until the cheese is melted. It makes 8 servings. Oh, now I have made cheesy biscuits. These are always good. Cheese biscuits. Now for this, you're going to need 2 cups of grated sharp cheese, 1/2 cup of butter or margarine, that's 1 stick, 1 cup of plain flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon of red pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, and nuts on the top. Well, I don't add any of that stuff. Cream the butter and mix with cheese. Let's see. Right here. Measure and sift the dry ingredients together and combine. Form into small balls. Well, isn't that nice? Oh, you gotta flatten your balls. And then top it with a nut. Oh my God. I need to grow up. Bake it for... Hang on, I need a minute. Okay, I think I'm alright. Bake at 425 degrees for about 10 minutes. Now see, when I make cheesy biscuits, I just make regular biscuits, and then I just, while I'm kneading the dough, I just sprinkle. I don't put that much cheese in there. I just put a little bit. I don't add any red pepper or paprika or any of that stuff. Instead of using nuts on top, you can get kinky and use 1 cup of Rice Krispies, which you can mix into the dough. Why in the world would you put rice? That's weird. I've never heard of putting Rice Krispies in biscuits. You mix it into the dough and cook as above. Well, that's kind of interesting. I sort of want to make that. I have never heard of putting Rice Krispies in biscuits before. I kind of want to see what that would taste like. Let me know if you would like to make this. I'll try to grow up and not be so stupid when I read it. I'm sorry, that just caught me off guard. Okay. Date nut bread. Now for date nut bread, you're going to need 2 cups of chopped dates, 2 cups of boiling water, 1 teaspoon of soda, 2 eggs, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of butter or margarine, 4 cups of sifted flour, whole wheat, 2 cups of brown sugar, 1 cup of chopped nuts, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Combine boiling water and soda, then add dates and butter. Combine with beaten eggs and sugar. Add to the first mixture. Add flour, spices, and baking powder, which have been sifted together, and then add the nuts and vanilla. Pour into loaf pans and let stand 5 minutes. Bake at 325 degrees for 1.5 hours. Pans should be greased. See, they need to put that up here before you pour it in there. Let the bread stand for 1 day before using. So I hope you don't want it right away, because you ain't going to get it for a whole day. It's date nut bread, though. You're not missing out on much. I'm not a big fan of that either. Okay. And we have favorite gingerbread. For that, you'll need 1 1/4 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of cloves, 1/2 cup of raisins. You don't put raisins in gingerbread, or you shouldn't. 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 egg lightly beaten, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of ginger, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/2 cup of molasses. Sift together the flour, baking powder, cinnamon, ginger, cloves, and salt. Combine the butter and sugar until well mixed. Beat 1/2 teaspoon of soda into molasses. Add to butter and sugar. Add 1/4 teaspoon of soda to 3/4 of a cup of boiling water. Alternate adding water and flour to butter and sugar mixture. Fold in beaten egg. The mixture will be thin. Pour into greased and floured 8-inch square pan. Bake in a preheated 325-degree oven for 30 minutes or until a toothpick in the middle comes out clean. For a variation, raisins, nuts, or orange marmalade can be added to the mixture after the eggs. Ooh. And Hush Puppies. I love Hush Puppies. I haven't had any in forever. Oh, if you live in Greensboro, Country Barbecue on Wendover now has their Brunswick stew. Yeah, I saw the sign the other day. If you've never had it, you got to try it. It is really good, and they also have really good hush puppies there too. For these hush puppies, you need 2 cups of cornmeal, 1 tablespoon of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of soda, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 cup of buttermilk, 1 onion grated, and 1 beaten egg. Sift together the cornmeal, flour, salt, and baking powder. Add the onion, egg, buttermilk, and soda. Shape into small balls. Now here you're going to take your little balls and drop them in deep fat. You're going to fry them in deep fat until your balls are brown. And then you can bite into them and they're going to be really good. And here is a recipe that looks really easy. You just mix everything. This is jalapeno cornbread. You need 1½ cups of self-rising cornmeal, 3 eggs, ½ cup of milk, ½ cup of oil, ½ teaspoon of salt, 1 can of creamed corn, 1 cup of shredded cheese, 1 cup of onions diced, and 3 jalapeno peppers. Mix all of the ingredients and then pour it into a greased pan or an iron skillet and bake at 450 degrees until brown. That's easy. And then we have a recipe for lemon bread with icing. For this, for the lemon bread, you're going to need ½ cup of shortening, 1 cup of sugar, ½ teaspoon of salt, 2 eggs, slightly beaten, 1 2/3 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, ½ cup of milk, ½ cup of chopped nuts, and the grated peel of 1 lemon. And for the icing, it's really easy. You just need 1/4 cup of sugar and the juice from 1 lemon. That's pretty simple. Okay, here we go. Cream the shortening with sugar. Add the eggs. Sift the flour and measure and sift again with baking powder and salt. Alternately add flour mixture and milk to shortening mixture while stirring. Add nuts and lemon peel. Bake it in a 5 by 9 inch pan at 350 degrees for 1 hour. Combine sugar and lemon juice and pour over bread when it comes out of the oven. Cool, slice, and serve. Oh, and this is really good too. I've never made it, but I've had it. Monkey bread. It's really good. It's kind of sticky, but it's really good. You need 1 cup of milk, 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 package of dry yeast, 1 cup of butter or margarine melted, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 3½ cups of all-purpose flour. Combine the milk, ½ cup of butter, sugar, and salt in a saucepan. Heat until the butter is melted. Cool to 105 degrees to 115 degrees Fahrenheit and stir in the yeast until dissolved. Place flour in a large bowl. Make a well in the flour and pour in liquid mixture. Not a whale like the sea mammal. I mean, W-E-L-L. I know it sounds like I said, make a whale. No, it's whale. It sounds the same. W-E-L-L. You don't have to make a mammal in there. Pour in liquid mixture. Stir until well blended. Cover and let rise until doubled in bulk, about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Turn the dough out on a floured surface. Roll the dough to a 1/4 inch thickness. Cut into 3-inch squares. Dip each square into the remaining butter. Layer squares in a 10-inch tube or a bundt pan. Let rise until doubled in bulk, about 30 to 40 minutes. Bake at 375 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes. Remove from pan while hot. And it's delicious. And then we have a recipe for old-time gingerbread. And for this you need 1/2 cup of shortening, 1/2 cup of sugar, 1 egg, 1 cup of sorghum molasses, 2½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1½ teaspoons of soda, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and 1/2 cup of hot water. Combine the shortening and the sugar and cream until fluffy. Add egg and molasses and beat well. Combine flour, soda, spices, and salt. Add the creamed mixture alternately with water. Pour the batter in a 9-inch square pan. Bake at 350 degrees for 45 minutes and then cool for 10 minutes. Oh, this sounds nice. Orange muffins. I've never had orange muffins before. Maybe we could make that with the cheesy biscuits. I want to try those cheesy biscuits with Rice Krispies. That just sounds intriguing to me. Okay, orange muffins. You need 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 egg slightly beaten, 1/2 cup of milk, 1 teaspoon of grated orange rind, 1/4 cup of orange juice, 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, and 1/2 cup of golden raisins. Oh, I love golden raisins. All right, combine the first 4 ingredients and set aside. Combine egg, milk, orange rind, juice, and oil and mix well. Add mixture to dry ingredients and stir until moistened, and then stir in the raisins. Grease muffin pans and fill with mixture about 2/3 full. Bake at 400 degrees for 20 minutes, and you get 1 dozen orange muffins from that recipe. I bet those are really good. Or you can make peanut bread. I don't think I've ever made peanut bread. No, I know I haven't. You need 2 cups of peanuts ground. I wonder how finely you have to grind them up. It doesn't say. 1/2 cup of butter melted, 1 cup of sugar, 2 eggs, 2/3 of a cup of sour milk. Ooh, sour milk, what in the world? 1 teaspoon of soda, 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Sift the dry ingredients and add nuts. Beat eggs and milk and stir into dry mixture. Add melted butter and pour into greased and floured loaf pan and bake it 45 minutes at 350 degrees. Or you can make Pancakes cornbread. I wonder if it has Pancakes in it. I hope not. You need 2 cups of cornmeal, 2 tablespoons of flour, 1 egg slightly beaten, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 4 tablespoons of cooking oil, and 1½ cups of buttermilk. Sift the dry ingredients. Add milk, egg, and cooking oil. Pour batter into preheated, well-greased iron skillet. And bake at 400 degrees until golden brown in a preheated oven. That sounds a lot like the one my mother used to make, except she didn't put any sugar in it. I think that's basically what she used to make. It was good. She never put sugar in her cornbread. And then we have a very simple, there are a lot of ingredients, but it looks really easy. Poppy seed bread. There's a lot here. Let's see, you need 3 cups of plain flour, 2 1/4 cups of sugar, 1½ teaspoons of salt, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, 1½ teaspoons of almond extract, 1½ cups of vegetable oil, 3 eggs, 1½ cups of milk, 1½ tablespoons of poppy seed, 1½ teaspoons of vanilla, 1½ teaspoons of butter flavoring, and poppy seed bread glaze, which that recipe you can find in the frostings. Combine all these ingredients, beat for 2 minutes, except the glaze. Bake in 2 large loaf pans 1 hour at 350 degrees. Okay. Oh, and we have pumpkin bread. That would be nice this time of year. Okay, first you have to sift together these things. 1½ cups of sugar, 1 teaspoon of soda, 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of cloves, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 2/3 cup of flour. And then you want to add and mix with a beater 2 eggs, 1/2 cup of oil, 1 cup of canned pumpkin, and 1/2 cup of water. And then after that, you want to add 1/2 cup of chopped nuts and 1/2 cup of chopped dates and let it bake at 1½ hours at 350 degrees. Oh, now here's something I made one time. They were actually really good, and it's a super simple recipe. Sour cream biscuits. Very easy to make. If you've never baked, this is a good one for you. You need 2 sticks of margarine. I think I actually use butter. 8 ounces of sour cream and 2 cups of self-rising flour sifted. Mix all ingredients well. Roll and place in a greased baking tin. Bake at 450 degrees until golden brown. Yeah, they're really, really good. I like these because they get a nice kind of a crunchy bottom to them. I like biscuits like that. You can also make sour cream cornbread, which I have not done. You need 1½ cups of self-rising cornmeal, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 8-ounce can of cream-style corn, 1 8-ounce package of sour cream, 2 eggs slightly beaten, and 1/2 cup of cooking oil. In a batter bowl, beat the eggs. Add sour cream, corn, and oil. Mix well. Add cornmeal and baking powder. Grease a large baking pan with Crisco and sprinkle with cornmeal. Pour mixture into pan and bake 30 to 35 minutes at 400 degrees or until golden brown. You may add pepper, chopped onions, and 1/2 cup of grated cheddar cheese before baking. So that sounds pretty good. The trains have gotten really loud lately. I don't know what it is, but I have to stop when they come through. And we can also make sour cream waffles. And for that, you need 1 cup of sifted cake flour, 1 1/3 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/8 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of soda, and 3 eggs separated, and 2 cups of thick sour cream. Sift the dry ingredients together and beat the yolks until light. Add sour cream and combine with dry mixture. Beat egg whites until stiff and fold into batter. And it makes 4 servings of sour cream waffles. And then we have Southern cornbread. I think it's the bacon drippings that make it Southern. I don't know. 2 cups of cornmeal, 1 teaspoon of soda, a teaspoon of salt, 2 eggs beaten, 2 cups of buttermilk, and 1/4 cup of bacon drippings. Combine cornmeal, soda, and salt. Stir in eggs and buttermilk. Heat bacon drippings in an iron skillet until very hot. Add drippings to batter and mix well. Pour batter into hot skillet and bake at 450 degrees for about 25 minutes or until bread is golden brown. I don't think I've ever actually had cornbread with bacon drippings in it. You can make tiny cheese biscuits. Well, I wonder what the difference is. I don't see anything about nuts or Rice Krispies. You need 1 pound of sharp cheddar cheese grated. Of course, that's about 2 cups. I think that's what the other one said. 4½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 1 pound of butter, holy mackerel, or margarine soft, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. That seems like a lot. Work with hands or an electric mixer. Blend cheese and butter into sifted dry ingredients until smooth. Pat or roll out on floured surface to about 1/3 of an inch thickness. Cut with the inside of a donut cutter or any other small cutter. The cutter is stubborn about turning loose of the dough. To avoid this, dip the cutter frequently into cold water. Place about 1/8 of an inch apart on an ungreased cookie sheet and bake at 325 degrees for about 15 minutes. Do not allow the biscuits to brown. It is easy to overbake them. Store in an airtight tin. Place wax paper between the layers. Oh God, it makes about 125. May freeze and thaw in a closed tin. Good God, why would you need 125 of these things? Well, they must be really little. I mean, you can make them bigger than that if you want to. Or you can make some yeast rolls. Those are always good. You need 1 package of active dry yeast, 1/4 cup of lukewarm water, 1/4 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of butter, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of scalded milk, 1 egg beaten, and 5 cups of sifted flour. Soften the yeast in water. Add 1/2 teaspoon of sugar. Add rest of sugar, butter, and salt to hot milk. Stir in sugar and stir until the sugar is dissolved. Cool, then add beaten egg. Stir in softened yeast. Sift flour into liquid ingredients. Mix by hand and stir until flour and liquid are well mixed. Turn dough out onto a lightly floured board and knead it quickly until it is smooth and elastic. Form into a small ball. Place the ball of dough into a greased bowl and turn it over to grease the surface. Cover and let rise for 1 hour. Turn out onto a well-floured surface. Knead well and shape into rolls as desired. Bake at 400 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes. Then we have some recipes for dressing and stuffing. Oh, look at the puppies. Dreidel, Mitzvah, Nanette, and Tova. I think they're Jewish. That's so cute. Look at those little faces. Well, here's an interesting one. We will end with this one here. We've got oyster stuffing. Now, I don't like oysters, but we'll read this. You need 1 onion, 1/2 cup of chopped celery, 1/4 cup of melted butter, 1 bud of garlic, 1 pint of small oysters, 2 tablespoons of chopped parsley, 4 cups of soft breadcrumbs, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper, and 1/2 cup of light cream. Saute onion and celery in butter with garlic until soft. Remove garlic. Add oysters and parsley. Cook until oysters begin to curl. Add crumbs and seasonings and stir in the cream. Stuff a well-buttered turkey. That sounds like an insult. So you just don't like somebody, well, you can just go stuff a well-buttered turkey. This section is pickles, preserves, and sauces. Oh my. But that is a look at the breads. It's kind of nice that they include dressings and stuffings too. So that will do it. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you again really soon.